Family, you ever notice how something small, something ordinary, like a purse, can suddenly become the battlefield for dignity, identity, and respect? Because when a purse turns into a tug of war, it's not really about leather and straps anymore. It's about power. It's about who gets believed, who gets doubted, and who feels entitled to control somebody else's story. Let's begin here. Most people know the unspoken rule. You never touch a woman's purse without permission. A purse is not just an accessory. It's a sanctuary. It's the keeper of keys, of wallets, of little folded pieces of life, grocery receipts, lip balm, maybe medicine, and sometimes secrets only that woman will ever know. So imagine the audacity it takes for a stranger to pick up someone else's purse in a public restroom and walk off with it as if it was theirs to handle. That's exactly what happened in this story. A white woman grabs a purse, and when a black grandmother tries to claim it on behalf of her daughter, the white woman refuses to let go. And family, that moment becomes more than a misunderstanding. It becomes symbolic, because what's at stake here is not just a purse, it's trust, it's belonging, it's authority over one's own property. The video that surfaced on Instagram shows a surreal scene. The two women literally locked in a tug of war, each pulling on the handbag like it's the rope in a contest. Add in the daughter's husband trying to pry the white woman's hands loose, and suddenly you've got a scene that looks more like a morality play than an airport hallway. And what's the white woman's justification? She tries to flip the script, questioning the grandmother's legitimacy. She starts barking things like, "Well, show me an ID," as if she were the authority, as if she had the right to put a black grandmother through an impromptu test before handing back her own family's belongings. Family, pause and reflect. What kind of arrogance does it take to create a test out of thin air and demand someone else pass it? That's not about honesty. That's about control. That's about policing another woman's truth. And Grandma, bless her heart, she wasn't having it. She let that fire come through. "Lady, you better move it," she snapped, with a voice that held the weight of generations. And then came the line that had all of social media hollering, "There ain't too many of nobody. I can handle my business, trust me." Now, family, I know the rules say not to use certain words, but let me put it like this. Grandma had the energy of someone who had seen life, survived it, and wasn't about to be disrespected in front of her kin. That wasn't just a warning. That was a declaration of self-respect. Social media understood the assignment. They called her a badass. They said Grandma was ready to crash out if she had to, because sometimes respect is not negotiable. And when somebody decides your family's property is theirs to judge, that's a line you're not going to let them cross. But then let's shift the lens for a second, because while Grandma was ready for the smoke, her son-in-law was taking another path. In the video, you hear him say quietly, "There's too many of them. Not enough of us." At first, that sounds like fear. Some online even clowned him, calling him scared. But look closer. What he did was deliberate. He was de-escalating. He was protecting. Because in that moment, he wasn't just a husband. He was a father with his children standing right there. He knew how quickly a situation like that could spiral, especially with tensions high and cameras rolling. And sometimes wisdom looks like calm when the world wants chaos. Other commenters saw that truth. They said that man was protecting his family. Everything isn't worth a crash out and a ride in a cop car, and that's a word. Because as much as we celebrate Grandma's fire, and we should, there's also wisdom in knowing when to let calm be the shield. So what do we see in this hallway? Skirmish. We see tension between fire and calm, between demanding respect and protecting peace. We see a grandmother unwilling to let her family be humiliated. We see a husband playing chess when others wanted checkers. And at the center of it all, a purse. But here's the thing, family. It was never really about the purse. It was about entitlement, about who gets to hold on and who is forced to prove themselves. Family, let's linger a little on the purse, because I need us to sit with how powerful that symbol is. A purse isn't just fabric and leather, it's a woman's mobile archive. It carries her proof of identity, her access to resources, her means of survival outside the home. To touch a woman's purse without permission is to touch her autonomy. And for this white woman to cling to that purse like it was hers to test and approve, that's where the insult cuts deeper. See, this wasn't just about returning lost property. This was about who gets to decide what belongs to whom. And in America, and apparently even in neutral spaces like an airport abroad, Black folks are too often forced to prove legitimacy in ways that white folks are not. That's why Grandma's fire lit up the internet. Because her words carried the weight of generations of women who've had to fight for their families to be recognized, for their children to be defended, for their humanity to be acknowledged. Her voice said, "Not today, not my family, not in front of my grandchildren." And yet, standing right beside her was the husband, choosing a different tone. His words, "There's too many of them, not enough of us," came from another generational lesson: survival. He was thinking about escalation, about numbers, about how quickly a hallway argument could turn into handcuffs or headlines. Some people online laughed at him, called him timid, called him scared, but others, and I believe wisely, saw strategy. He wasn't scared, he was aware. He knew that when you're Black in a confrontation, the system is never neutral. He knew that calm was his contribution to keeping the family safe. So in that moment, you had Grandma representing fire, righteous indignation, raw defense, generational pride, and you had the husband representing water, steady, cooling, controlled. And maybe that's why the purse got back in their hands without fists flying or police swarming. Family, that's a balance many of us know too well. In every confrontation, there's the pull between "I will not be disrespected" and "I need to make it home tonight." Between dignity and survival, between fire and calm. Now let's talk about entitlement, because that white woman created her own test, demanded ID, demanded answers, and still wasn't satisfied. Think about that. She turned herself into judge and jury of another family's property. She believed she had the right to hold on until she was convinced. That's not about helping, that's about power. And this is where we see the cultural pattern. Time and time again, Black people are forced to prove legitimacy in spaces where white folks are given the benefit of the doubt. Whether it's a purse in an airport, a bank check at the counter, or a delivery driver in a neighborhood, the burden of proof always seems to rest on our shoulders. That's why the husband's calm mattered, but Grandma's fire mattered too, because calm gets you through the moment, but fire reminds the world that we see what's happening, that we refuse to normalize being tested, doubted, or diminished. Now, let's not forget the children in this story. They were right there watching. And family, you know what that means. They were witnessing a real-life lesson about how to navigate disrespect. They saw Grandma saying, "Don't let folks play in your face." They saw their father saying, "Protect your peace even if others misjudge it." Two lessons side by side, and maybe both are necessary in a world that constantly puts us to the test. Social media reflected that duality. Some cheered Grandma's energy, others praised the husband's composure. And in truth, both reactions make sense, because Black families have always had to carry both fire and calm at the same time. One to demand dignity, one to ensure survival. And here's the beauty. Even in the middle of chaos, even in the middle of entitlement gone wild, the purse made its way back to where it belonged. Not because the stranger granted permission, but because that family, fire and calm together, took back what was theirs. That's the cultural resonance here. This wasn't just a purse. This was about who has the authority to define ownership, about how easily Black people get put on trial in everyday spaces, about how dignity once again had to be defended in public. Family, the comments said it all. One person wrote, "Grandma was ready to let loose." Another said, "That husband wasn't scared, he was protecting his family." And in those two comments, you see the duality of our lives. Protecting dignity, protecting survival, carrying both at once. Family, let's take a step back and see the bigger picture, because what we witnessed in that airport hallway was not just a scuffle over a purse. It was a snapshot of our lived reality, how Black dignity is tested, how entitlement tries to write rules in the moment, and how our families must constantly balance fire and calm just to exist. The purse was only the stage. The real drama was about who gets to claim authority. The white woman believed she had the right to hold another woman's belongings hostage until she felt satisfied. She created hoops, demanded ID, barked accusations, all from the position of self-appointed gatekeeper. And that, family, is the kind of entitlement that has shadowed us for generations. But what made this moment so powerful was the response. Grandma's voice rang out like thunder. "There ain't too many of nobody. I can handle my business, trust me. That wasn't just a clapback. That was the sound of ancestral fire. It was every grandmother, every mother, every elder who's had to fight to defend family saying, I refuse to be small. I refuse to bow to nonsense. I refuse to let my children see me back down. And right beside her, the husband whispered a different wisdom. There's too many of them, not enough of us. His words may have sounded timid to some, but look deeper. That was chess. That was survival. That was the strategy of a man protecting his wife, his children, and his future, because he knew escalation could bring consequences far heavier than a tug of war. 2 responses, 2 forms of protection, 2 legacies. And family, isn't that the story of us? The fire that says, don't try me, and the calm that says, don't trap me. Both necessary, both valid, both passed down generation after generation. Now let's reflect on what the children saw that day. They saw a grandmother teaching them about courage, about standing tall even when someone tries to belittle you. They saw a father teaching them about restraint, about knowing when the fight costs more than it gives. 2 lessons, side by side, braided into their memory. And one day, when those children face their own tests, they'll carry both, the fire and the calm. This is why the video resonated online. People weren't just laughing at Grandma's sass or critiquing the husband's tone. They were recognizing themselves, their families, their own experiences of being policed in everyday life. They saw how quickly ownership and dignity can become contested when you're Black in public. And they saw the beauty of a family that refused to crumble under the pressure. So here's the deeper truth. This was never about a purse. It was about respect. It was about who feels entitled to question us and how we respond when they do. It was about the clash between arrogance and dignity, between control and resistance. And family, let me say this plainly, Black families don't owe anyone proof of legitimacy. We don't owe random strangers explanations for our belongings, our presence, or our right to exist in peace. We've already paid too much in blood, sweat, and generations of proving ourselves. The time for arbitrary tests is over. But until the world learns that, we will keep balancing fire and calm. We will keep showing our children both sides of survival, the courage to clap back and the wisdom to walk away, because both are necessary in a world that constantly puts us on trial. So let me close with this reflection. That purse in the hallway became more than a purse. It became a parable. It showed us entitlement and action, yes, but it also showed us resilience. It showed us a grandmother's fire, a husband's strategy, and a family's refusal to let disrespect win. And maybe that's the lesson for us all. Hold your fire when you must. Hold your calm when you must. But above all, hold on to your dignity. Don't let anyone snatch it, tug at it, or demand permission to recognize it. Because family, we are not defined by the hoops they build for us. We are defined by the way we protect our own, the way we pass down wisdom, the way we refuse to be erased. And if anyone needs a reminder, just replay Grandma's words, I can handle my business, trust me.